Hey, 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 it's another episode of Grieving Voices. And today my guest is Dr. Dolores Fazzino. She is a trailblazing thought leader, visionary, and innovator, is revolutionizing the realm of energy healing. As a renowned nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, she fearlessly combines the power of intuition and trust to facilitate profound transformations. Driven by a deep belief in the body's innate wisdom, she guides individuals on a transformative journey, empowering them to tap into their own healing potential. Prepare to be captivated by Dr. Fazzino's unique blend of intuition, energy healing expertise, and unwavering trust in the body's innate ability to heal itself. I love your bio, by the way.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
And we spoke just a couple minutes before we started to hit record. And so I really am excited to talk about weaving a lot of this energy work that you and I both do, but into the conversation of grief. But
Yeah.
before we get there, I think it's important for people to understand who Dr. Fazzino was as a child, because you had a lot of grief in your childhood. You referenced being able to heal a lot of grief in your childhood, and how that shaped you to get to where you are today, because it's a journey, right?
Oh, it's always a journey and it continues to be a journey no matter how old you are, because it's just like, you know what? Just when you think you're out of the clear, it's like something else kind of happens. So but that's what we're all here for, is to learn and to grow. And we all sign up to come to planet Earth to get our PhDs in being human. Okay. And we're all working on our dissertation, and being human is about experiencing things in our life and most importantly, experiencing emotions. And for the longest time, emotions have gotten a really bad rap. I know I grew up in a childhood household where we weren't allowed to feel because that was a coping mechanism. Because if, God forbid, if you unleashed your emotions, especially the ones that were labeled as not so good, you would open the lid of Pandora's box and it would never shut. And we know that today that that's not true. However, I'm a product of the 1960s, so I've been around for a little while. And life back in during that time was way different. Everything was like in nice little sterile containers on the shelves. It's the illusion of the white picket fence and everything's beautiful, but behind the doors was like shit show. Do you know what I'm saying? It was just like everybody was so concerned about keeping up with the neighbors and what will the neighbors think? The neighbors really didn't care. You know what I'm saying? It was just like it was all presentation. But for my childhood in particular, my mom was the daughter of an alcoholic, which she never really admitted to until she was 60. So she had the MO of, if anything was painful or anything, her MO was to ignore it, it'll go away. Now, I'm an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person. I was born that way. I was wired differently than a lot of other people. And so my parents didn't know what to do with me. When my mom would say to me, ignore it, it'll go away if something was painful, I would try ignoring it and it wouldn't go away. It got bigger. And I used to say, it's not going away, it's getting bigger. So for me, in order to survive my childhood, I needed to channel my emotion into some creative venture, be it art or music. And I really gravitated to music and really excelled in it. In fact, I was on a pathway to become a concert clarinetist when I was in high school. And in the 11th hour, I changed my mind. And I changed my mind because also what was going on during that time in my childhood, my dad developed a chronic health condition that stemmed from having a back surgery back in 1966 when he was hospitalized and he picked up a hospital acquired infection at that time after, during his surgery, after his surgery. And pretty much it pulled the rug out from underneath him because he was sick for over 2 months in the hospital. And I think I was in second grade at the time, and my mom's trying to keep it all together. with four young kids at home. I'm the oldest one. And, we didn't know if daddy was going to make it home or not, or all this other stuff. And he did survive. Yet when he came home, he looked like a shell of a man that I recalled. So that was the beginnings of a 10-year journey with my father with that particular health condition, because he would be fine for a while. Whenever his immune system got compromised, that whole sequela of that 2 month of being in the hospital and having all this stuff would reoccur. It happened between 1970 and 1975, four different times. So my childhood was like an emotional roller coaster. Daddy would, we were always waiting for the other shoe to drop when daddy's going to get sick again, have to go in the hospital and be laid up for like 2 months and be on his deathbed and all these other nasty things that me channeling we couldn't feel too. Okay. So I channeled my emotion into my music and I really excelled at it. So what was the pivotal point in all of this is that by the fourth episode of this, we flash forward to 1975. So this has been about a 10-year span that this has been going on. The CAT scanner came on to the horizon in Western medicine as one of the newer technology pieces to diagnose things. So my dad's surgeon put him underneath the CAT scan, and lo and behold, they found that where his infections had been stemming from was where he had his previous back surgery. So in 1975, their solution was they offered like a spinal fusion, which in 1975, that was in its neophyte stages of development. And it came with high risks that you would either be paralyzed, you might die, you might get better, you may not get better. And my mom was at her wall with all of this because, my mom's coping mechanisms were a little different than the average. And so she was looking for alternative possibilities. And you have to remember, this is 1975. We didn't have Google MD. We didn't have any time electron. We had dial phones. We had pay phones. We had, we didn't have what we have today. Okay. Because that was like 50 years ago. And we had the newspapers and we had the rags like the National Enquirer. So she ended up finding an article in the National Enquirer, of all places, of a man who was a Presbyterian minister from Cairo, Michigan, who had the gift of laying on of hands. And he was actually being featured. There's an article being written featuring him and his capabilities because he assisted his brother from healing from leukemia. He didn't heal him, he assisted in the healing of that. And Reverend Holmes had been doing this work for well over 25 years, and this was in 1975. And so he had been doing it since the 1950s. And you have to remember, this was considered wacko quacko back in 1975, okay? So my mom was all over this like butter on bread. My dad, not so much, because he was the biggest skeptic. And it just so happened that my dad was hospitalized at that time when that conversation was occurring. And he had said to my mother, I'll only do it if the surgeon agrees to it. So my mom marches out to the nurse's station, and there, lo and behold, there's the surgeon sitting at the desk writing his notes. And she makes an announcement to the surgeon saying, doctor, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to assist my husband with his condition. Would that be okay? Surgeon's writing, looks up at her. It says, sure, that's fine, and then continues to write. So my mom took that piece of information, went back to my dad's room, shared that with him, and my dad agreed. Not 10 minutes went by. She returns back to the same nurse's station, the same surgeon sitting there, and makes the announcement to the surgeon saying that my husband agreed to have the spiritual healer come in. The surgeon stopped what he was doing, looked up at her and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to that. So my mom didn't share that piece of information with my father. And a month later, Reverend Holmes came to our house in Connecticut. I grew up on the East Coast. I'm now in Southern California. And what I remember about him, and I was like a junior in high school, he was an extremely humble man, very um, soft spoken and just had really he was just a beautiful energy and that essence was just so pure and radiant. And I don't know how he knew this, but my dad had one leg that was shorter than the other, and my dad was barefoot. He didn't have any of his slippers or shoes that had the lift or anything, but he knew my dad had that for some odd reason. Nobody told him that either. But when my dad sat down, he said for my father to put both his feet up, and sure enough, he did. And you could tell that there was a 1 inch gap between the longer and shorter. And he said, "Put your legs down." And then he started saying some prayers over my father. And he touched his belly, his solar plexus, and his crown chakra, the top of his head, and quoted some scripture and kind of went into a trance. And, 3 or 4 minutes passed by. And he said to my father, "Okay, put both your feet up." And they were both the same length. In that moment, my life changed forever because I knew it was my mission in this lifetime to bridge the physical with the spiritual and the visible with the invisible. And that's how I got on my pathway to become, in healthcare and being a nurse and a nurse practitioner. My father, the skeptic, started wailing like a baby like I never ever witnessed before. Because remember, he needed to have something visual to know that something was actually happening. Okay. And so more prayers were said over my father for about the next half hour, and then he was instructed to go rest. My father slept for over 24 hours because, as we know, energy healers, when we do massive energy work in a field, it's like our body is a computer. It's gotten an upgraded program. We need to reboot this computer. So we do that by sleeping sometimes, and it allows our body to recalibrate things at a different level. My dad returned to the same hospital, same CAT scanner. A month later, there was no evidence of any infection or any problem. My dad never had to have that surgery. My dad never had to revisit that particular problem in his lifetime. And he passed away about almost 12 years ago at the age of 80. So that's been my journey. And you have to remember that back in the 70s, people would say, "You want to do what?" So, I mean, you had to kind of keep that hush hush because I knew what my mission was, yet how I was going to get to the end point of where I'm at now has been an incredible journey because I've got to witness so much in the last, quote, 50 years of my life in regards to health and wellness and where we're heading and the trajectory of that as well. The good news is that in the 1990s, when the National Institutes of Health started to look at complementary and alternative and integrative medicine, that was like the gateway opening where it was a little more embraced. And I truly believe that, energy medicine, vibrational frequency, and healing and that nature is where we're heading in the future because we're all energy. Everything is energy. Everything that you and I are both looking at in our offices are energy. It's just a very dense form of that. Now, what's also energy are our thoughts, our beliefs, how we handle our emotions, if we handle them at all. We have pockets of stuck energy everywhere. I mean, it's just what it is. But also, it's our connectedness to our higher source, our inner wisdom, that intuitive ability we all have, that God spark. It's all the same. It's the same thing. But also the ancestral stuff that comes into play. It's like we have all come right now at this time and place in humanity's evolution to be this big peak where everything is at a precipice that could change at any moment. And the beauty is that everything is happening in this moment. There's no past, present, or future. It's right here, right now. So what you do in this particular moment has the capability to heal the past, but also create the future that quickly. And that's where we're at right now. So it's pretty exciting to be witnessing this and living through this. It's like my time is finally here.
curious how that experience ended up changing your father's life in maybe a spiritual sense. Maybe what he chose to do physically, like maybe he decided to, take a chance and live out a dream he had, or something, but then he got sick and so he couldn't, or and also the impact it had on your mother's life too.
Oh my God, you have no idea. It's like I think the best way I could describe it is like this whole thing was a tapestry, and there was so many different threads hanging on to different people and their experiences that threaded into this. Um, I personally think, whatever this was part of my own initiation into where I needed to go. And, there's no mistake. You choose your experiences, you choose your parents, you choose that way before you were born. It's all, it's called pre-life planning that, that's for a whole nother conversation, but this does occur where you sit around with the essences of the souls that and you pick out your parents that are going to best serve you for where you are. Now, my mom's mother, um, was one of my first spiritual teachers. And even though she passed away when I was a teenager, she's still very much part of my life. And it was almost as if she had to be born in order for me to be able to. It's hard to put that into words, but I got the whole gist of it. Now I know why she was here put on earth. It was because for me. It's just the
Hmm.
weirdest thing ever, but it's just like got that huge epiphany recently.
Hmm.
Um, so, what I think what people need to understand is that even though people are no longer physically with us, they're still very much more with us than you ever know. It's just they're in another dimension at a higher frequency where they don't have a physical body. They're here, right now, and you have access to that all the time. We as human beings forget to ask. And, we think we're the Lone Ranger or we have the illusion that we're all by ourselves. We're never by ourselves. Never, never, ever. There's help available. It's just in another dimension. And as we talk about ascension a little bit, humanity is evolving and ascending as well, too. We are transitioning from third dimensional reality to going to fifth dimensional reality. And for, the listeners that don't really know what that's all about, it's like third dimensional reality is a very dense frequency. It's what we're kind of witnessing right now, that it's um, the old paradigm of power, greed, ego. It's about trying to, force and control. There's a lot of that going on. I mean, this is an old paradigm that's been here on Earth for a while. It's like duality too comes into play. Like, we have the black and white thinking, good and bad, dark and light. And where we're kind of shifting to as people are starting to wake up and realize that for so long, they've been looking on the outside of themselves for what is going to give to make them happy, which in essence, we know that's not true because it all starts with ourselves first. And, when people start waking up, they have this realization that, life is great, but I'm just not happy, or I'm not feeling fulfilled, or, yeah, they chase the external stuff and it's a temporary fix, but they're chasing the next external thing for the next temporary fix. It's not a lasting happiness, peace, inner serenity, and joy. It's about chasing things, and technically we've given our power away, either consciously or unconsciously, to allow that to bring us our happiness instead of choosing to come within and allowing ourselves to create that relationship with ourselves. Imagine that, having a relationship with yourself, learning to become your own best friend because, newsflash, the longest relationship you're going to ever have in your life is the one you have with yourself. But yet,
Very true.
people treat themselves like crap. You know, case in point, what do you say to yourself in the quiet of your mind? It probably isn't pretty sometimes. And we're all guilty of this, but this is what happens is that we're beating ourselves up. But, when we start having a love affair with ourselves and a relationship with ourselves, it's like this is where you're able to get those subtle hints. Okay. Where, we've all had those moments where our intuition is kind of whispering in our ear saying, Dolores, don't do that. Dolores ignores it. Dolores is doing the same thing. This time it's like the voice is a little louder. Dolores, don't do that. Dolores ignores that. Then all of a sudden, the refrigerator drops on her. So, what I'm saying is that the signs are there. You have to be still enough to be able to hear the wisdom. And when we are in a noisy world out there, we it's the external, it's the doing mobile out there. There's all this chaos and drama because energetically, the gig is almost up on the third dimensional reality. So you're seeing a lot of this stuff coming into play right now. You're seeing more chaos because it's like the third dimension is trying to hang on to its power because they know that it's gotten amped up because they know that it is, going to be going away probably. Okay. Or it's going to be, they have a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear-based thinking with third dimensional reality, lack, fear, whatever. Oh, well, God forbid, I'm not going to have this. And when we go to fifth dimensional reality and you come to peace within yourself, you have that certainty within yourself that no matter what is going on around you, you're fine. And when you come to that point, people go through a spiritual awakening sometimes and they realize that they are in control of everything, including their life. It's not outside there. That's when you give your power away to something outside of yourself. It's really about coming back to self. So, going on to fifth dimensional reality. So, what is fifth dimensional reality? Fifth dimensional reality is a whole different flavor. It is the essence of love. It is the essence of community group. It's about prosperity, abundance for all, not just a select group of people. But it's also an essence and a beingness that no matter what is going on, you're going to be fine. Now, case in point, here in the United States, we've had some interesting things happen the last several months. And many of us are like scratching our head, like, when is humanity going to wake up? Well, you know, many of us have done a lot of work, and I feel like the best way to handle some of these things is look at where you're getting triggered first of all, okay? Because the trigger is the power piece of how you could go within and to create more peace within yourself. Number two, have some self compassion for yourself because we need whopping doses of that right now because we judge and criticize everything, including ourselves. And we've got to stop that because when we judge and criticize, guess what? We add that to the collective consciousness and we're actually adding fuel to that fire. Okay. As small as it is, being beating yourself up and not being kind to yourself. Okay. It's that simple. So when you start having more self-compassion for yourself and loving yourself and just accepting yourself for just who you are, you're going to become more in alignment with who you are at a soul level and your higher oversoul. And you're going to be in alignment with that. And when you're in alignment with that, it's like when it's the definition of when all the holes in the Swiss cheese line up. It's like a bullet point to creation, manifestation, and just having a better life. Now, my remedy for everything that's kind of happened since November is that, okay, you know what? I am not going to allow that situation to create my reality because I'm not going to give my, that is not going to rule my reality. My reality is way different than that. And that's okay. So what I choose to do is to be an observer and a witness. What I mean by that, I'm going to sit in my lounge chair. I already popped the popcorn and I'm going to enjoy the show because it's going to be very interesting. But it's like being in the world, but being not of this world. So we're watching the whole demise of what's going to be happening as we shift from third dimensional to fifth dimensional. I know I shared a lot of stuff in a short period of time.
No, I've been taking notes as I've been listening. I love your mug, by the way. Stay wild. I
I
love
know.
that.
It's just like, yeah, I love my mugs.
It's wild out there, right? Stay
Oh
wild
my
with it.
God,
Yeah.
it's wild. But
So, but it's like, so how do you do that? Like through what tools? What have you picked up along the way? Was the most helpful to you when you were first starting, and what's your practice now?
well, I'm a firm believer in mindful activity because I feel that mindful activity is the gateway to getting into being in the present moment. Okay. And it's all about being in the present moment. And, mindful activity is anything that allows you to lose all sense of time and place. And we've all had those moments where you get caught up in a project and hours go by and it seems like it's 10 minutes. That is a definition of a mindful activity. And what's beautiful is that it's going to be unique to every individual. It could be as on a continuum as formal as doing like sitting in silent meditation and, chanting, or it could be going for a walk on the beach or gardening or picking up a craft or painting or music, whatever is going to get you in the zone of just timelessness. And, when you look at our fur and feather foes, our friends, they're the definition of being in the present moment. They're right here, right now. There's no such thing as time. There's no such thing as, holding a grudge or whatever. Well, maybe there is if, they've been punished and stuff like that. They have a tendency to do that. But, overall, children and animals are our best teachers because they haven't been tainted by this world yet as to, what has been projected onto them as to what's going to work and what's not going to work because of other people. It's about allowing yourself the grace to just be instead of thinking that you always have to be in motion. Because when you're being, okay, and you're doing a mindful activity, you're actually in the present moment. You're right here, right now. Okay. When you're in the present moment, you're actually in your physical body, believe it or not. When you're in your physical body, this is where you get to experience emotions. You have to have a physical body to experience emotions. I think what's really kind of comical is that people come to planet Earth to want to learn about emotions on the other side. They plan out their pre-life stuff. They get a whopping dose of amnesia. They come here and they're like, "Oh my God, emotion, dip the pool. Whoop, I'm in my head. No, 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 I don't want to feel." It's like they shut everything down. So what happens is that it's very telling for me where people are when they say, "I think I feel." What the hell is "I think I feel"? It's intellectualizing your emotions. You're not actually feeling them. You're thinking about what it should feel like, but you're not actually having the experience. You need to drop from here to this heart brain. Okay, so we have a brain, heart brain, and a gut brain. And, when we're here in our heart, if you look at the figure of eight, and the heart is the intersection of the two lobes, this is how we bring more balance into us because we need our brain, but we need it to play. We need all the things to play nicely in the sandbox together. Right now, it's just like they're doing this sometimes, right? So we need to blend the things together, and it's not about saying one thing is better than the other. No. I always like to tell people to experiment and make it your own. It's not about somebody else doing it for you. You have the experience because when you have the experience, this is where you're going to gain the wisdom. Now, getting back to what I was talking about, being in your body and experiencing emotions, when you're able to feel what is going on, okay, you're, say, for example, you get triggered and all of a sudden you're going down the rabbit hole of like, oh my God, and you're going on and on and on. It's like when you are awoke, okay, this is where your power comes into play. When you are in your physical body and so you get triggered, you have options and choices. Well, you always did, but you're more aware of what your options and choices are. Yes, you could go down the rabbit hole and react, and sometimes, that's necessary. Or you could say to yourself, that's interesting. I'm being triggered. And why is that so? Instead of just automatically, respond, it's allowing you to, instead of react, respond, but also to gain the wisdom as to why. So all you need to do is ask why to yourself. And I'm being triggered because of what? And usually it's the trigger is a tip of the iceberg, is something way deeper that's within you that is crying to be healed. Okay. And sometimes it's just the acknowledgement of what that is enough to shift it and brings this whole triggering thing or the emotional uprise to neutrality. It sounds really magical and, very alchemical, and that's what it is. I feel people need to realize healing doesn't take a lot. Once you are dialed in and you're in your body and you're gaining the wisdom and you're able to hear that voice within yourself, that voice within yourself is going to be your barometer and to guide you onto your next steps.
I can hear people, but what if I'm questioning what I'm hearing? What if how do I know it's not my ego? How do I know, you know what I mean? Like how do I know
Okay,
it's my
so
heart and not my ego and I'm not
so
making it up and
so the thing is like start doing grounding exercises. So people could go to my website. I have a free downloadable, and it's grounding in multiple dimensions. It's being in the present moment, but it's a grounding exercise that's about 5 minutes, and it allows you to ground your energy in multiple dimensions. And you will definitely feel a difference when you're in your head or when you're in your body. When you pop into, okay, let's put it this way. You're doing your life and all of a sudden you get this intuitive hit that you need to be doing something else. And then you jump from your body into your head trying to figure out, is this real? Is this whatever? So you've disconnected the flow by jumping from here to here. And we need to keep you, remember the whole infinity loop? You need to be here. When you stay in your heart and your body, it's the right thing. When we start going into our head and trying to, you know, figure something out, there's nothing to figure out. It's just having a lot of blind faith and trust of what you're getting. And we've been deprogrammed to not trust this. Okay? We've been deprogrammed to not to trust this in many aspects of our life, most importantly, our health and well-being. Okay? And I could say this because I'm Western medicine trained and I dabble, I play on the fringes of woo-woo and stuff like that. Many people give their power away to something outside of themselves, the doctor, when their body's screaming at them, don't do it. But they say, well, I don't have the knowledge and stuff, so I'll trust that. Uh, you may want to recoil and, have another go pass at that because you know what? We've all had those situations where our intuition's screaming at us, we ignore it, and we do something different and we live to pay the price for it. And right?
I just wanted to share, like, it made me think of a great tip for grievers, right? Because when you're grieving, let's say it's been It doesn't matter if it's been 6 months, 6 years. If you feel like you are stuck in this deep depression, you then go to the doctor, right, to
Mhm.
address your depression. Not really realizing that if you sat with your emotions, did this practice of getting to know yourself more intimately instead of trying to run away from your feelings and your past and really
Yeah,
look at it, you would not need that doctor. You would not feel depression. You would feel empowered. And I think
I
that's the
agree.
opposite, it's so
It's
easy for grievers to jump to that.
well, and the thing is, I think I know grieving is we all go through it. And, whether you've lost a loved one or, right now in Southern California, we're ravishing the whole LA fire thing, a huge loss of property. People are grieving, for what had been, what could have been, and who knows why all this stuff happens to people. It just happens. I I know from my personal life, it's allowed me to grow at a very deep and profound level, allowing me to have more empathy and compassion, not only for myself, but for other people as well. And grieving is such a personal thing that, you know what? Allow yourself to feel and experience what you're experiencing, because when you try to suppress that or ignore it, it's like whatever that is, it turns inward. You start having health challenges. You start getting anxious because you're not, that's energy that needs to be experienced. So it becomes neutral. When we try to stuff these bubbles of emotion and not deal with them in our energy field, guess what? Over time, it tips into your physical body, and then it starts raising hell in a handbasket. You might come down with cancer. Maybe you got some other chronic thing going on because of that, because it's repressed emotion or stuck emotion or trapped emotion, whatever that is. And it's wanting to come to from unconsciousness to consciousness. It's like it moves from being, you know, dormant to active because it wants a way out because it doesn't want to stay there. So when we are able to look at what we hide in our physical body, okay, well, let's back up a little bit. Just imagine an iceberg, okay? The tip of the iceberg is the physical body of what we could see. Underneath the surface is all the emotional, mental, spiritual, ancestral, things are connected in everything that we can't see is underneath the surface of that iceberg. What happens is that when we start melting the iceberg, okay, it floats up. So what's underneath the surface is starting to float up into what we could see, right? Because it's melting. So what's unconscious underneath the surface is moving to consciousness above the waterline, right? So now we need to deal with it. It's like when things are healing, the unconsciousness needs to move to consciousness so we could see it, so it could be removed from our field.
That's a very good analogy. And
Thank
it's
you.
painful and it doesn't feel
It,
good.
no, it doesn't. And the thing is, it's like this too shall pass.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, and it does. And you know, I'll tell you, being a human being is not for the faint of heart. You're brave and you're courageous. And that gets tested all the time. And you know what? It's okay. You're not alone. You're not the only one doing it. I have newsflash for you. Everybody experiences this, but not a lot of people talk about it.
So, how does someone, you talked about moving into the fifth dimension, and what do you suspect is the timeline on that? And then
Well, you
also,
know what?
I have another question after
Yeah,
that.
go ahead. I'm going to string the ascension
Okay.
sentence in there because,
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then how do
because,
you know? Yeah. How do you know if
oh my
you're,
God.
yeah.
So
Okay.
funny story because I've been in the clinical setting. most of my career, and I still practice a couple days a week. I assist in surgery, so as a nurse practitioner, but I also do my other stuff as well, and podcast, and I have a radio and TV show as well too. But what I'm saying is this. Probably about 15 years ago, there was like a lot of people coming to the emergency department with these signs and symptoms that were mimicking like heart attacks and really bad, disease processes and whatever. And the ER doctors would work everybody up and they weren't having a heart attack or anything like that. But what was clear to me, I was thinking like, "Oh my god, those are ascension symptoms." I just kind of knew this. I said because what happens is that okay, we're energetic beings. Okay, remember we're vibrating maybe third, fourth dimensional reality right now. Our bodies are much denser. When you take on a higher frequency, your body chemistry and everything, you're becoming more fluid-like than dense. Okay, the body's physicality is more of a fluid versus a solid. And so what happens with that is like just like a computer gets an upgraded program, energetically, we are taking in more light, which is a higher frequency. And our body is like the computer that needs to be recalibrated to the higher frequency. It's like creating homeostasis at a higher frequency for people who, are into science and stuff. So what happens is this, when we get a download of information, sometimes we might feel tired. We might feel like we're coming down with the flu. We might also, feel like our chest is, we're having chest pain or whatever. And I'm not saying don't go to the ER, please do, because God forbid if it's something bad, you want to make sure we catch it. Yet just know that I, if you go to bed sometimes and just relax and sleep, you'll feel different, the next day because our bodies are recalibrating to a higher frequency. So, case in point, I recently just recovered from like a week's worth of Lagrange. And I am sure I know I've been getting energetically downloaded. And it was about me purging a lot of old stuff that was stuck in my body. And that's fine because and it didn't take long to do that. And I actually feel more alive now than I have a week before. As weird as that is. So it's just allowing yourself to just be right here instead of reacting and, oh my God, I'm dying or whatever, because that's what our natural tendency is. Just sit with that and just breathe and do what you can to, I want to say, soothe self, nurture self, take care of self. This is your body wanting you to just rest. We're in a deep state of a lot of people just kind of resting because this is what's happening. The trajectory since 2012 has been like this, and it's like this now. So things are happening rapidly. And they're going to continue to rapidly do that. So our body is going to continually to recalibrate itself to take on more light energy and more frequency. So that's what we're witnessing. And I invite people, to do a Google search. Just look up ascension symptoms because there's a whole list of them. But I have witnessed that because I knew exactly what that was. The ER doctors would send people home because they would find nothing wrong with them. And there wasn't anything wrong with them. They was just ascension symptoms. Like 2 days later, they were fine.
You know,
Interesting.
I always thought of it as like grief just manifesting or like emotions just manifesting, right? It, since I've been a certified grief specialist and doing
Hmm.
the work that I do and learning, like fast forward, like I know that now, right? But before I went for my certification, like the day before my class was to start, I woke up with diarrhea and vomiting. And
Ah,
I had gone to eat with someone I met on the tour bus in this other, I went to another state for my training and certification. And I was going through the process that I take people through now. So
yeah,
it's like, I didn't know what to expect and I was excited, but I was also really anxious about it too. But had dinner, had the same meal as this other person. So I know it wasn't food poisoning.
yeah.
But yeah, I recognize now That's what it was. It was like the purge, like you said, the word purge. It was the
Yep.
purge before the purge.
And, I think we all could agree on this too. It's like whenever you start or sign up for a course, even though it might be months away, it actually coursework starts that day you sign up. It's like energetically you've committed to that and it's like starting. It's in motion. It just doesn't
Mhm.
start like 2 months later when you show up. It's in motion.
Exactly,
So,
because yeah, you committed to it, right? Your energy is behind it already and doing the
exactly.
work. Yeah.
That's right. So, I feel that we're in very exciting times. And I'm very, very optimistic of what the future is going to bring because even though it looks not so much that way on the outside, this is a necessary process that we're going through, and it's going to be okay. We're all going to be fine. We really are. And I think one of the biggest things I could share with people is just to be kind to yourself, love yourself, and really work on having a relationship with yourself. Maybe make 2025 a year of recommitting to you.
What has your grief taught you?
Oh my. My grief has taught me that I am more resilient than I could ever imagine. Um, I'm never alone, and there's more help available to us, both the people we could see and the things that we cannot.
Yeah, you mentioned the word trust, and that's actually the word, my word of the year.
That was my word last year.
Oh, yeah, because I think I'm a lot. I really struggle because I'm very much up
Yeah,
here, and like a lot of people, right? We try to intellectualize grief. We try to intellectualize, like you said, problem solving and talking our way out of it, or solution finding our way out of things. And
and
sometimes,
sometimes the only thing you could do is just be. And
mhm.
just, allow things. And I think we as human beings have been programmed that we have to be in motion. We have to be doing something in order to be labeled as productive member of society. Who made that rule up?
An old
Seriously.
paradigm, right?
Oh my God, that is so. We're changing that. I feel that when you sit in those moments of just being, sometimes you get some of your most profound insights because
Well,
you're quiet enough to hear that.
and brought up a good point too, and this is one thing that I say a lot is really the better answers are in the better questions. So asking
Yes,
yourself better questions, engaging in questions with other people, can unlock something for you too. Like we can't see the label from inside the jar either. So it's like if you feel like you need to talk things out, sometimes that's energetically that help is helpful for people to talk things out, to get
absolutely.
that inspiration and like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or it can shift your entire perspective of a past experience when you engage in conversation about something emotional, right?
Absolutely. And, even doing something like journaling or something creative, if dabble in painting or, even if you knit or crochet, I mean, it's a mindful activity. If you could just step into something that's going to, like, I'm going to repeat myself, just allow you to lose all sense of time and place. That's the sweet spot.
That's a great piece of advice in a nutshell
Thank you.
for listeners. um so what are you looking forward to? What do you got going on? How can people reach you, find you, all the things?
Oh, thank you. Well, you could reach out to me through my website. My website is drdoloresfazzino.com. And I mentioned something about that guided meditation, to be in the present moment. I think that is a great place to start. I also offer a program called I'm Awake Now What? and it's for people excuse me. It's for people who are on their spiritual journey that have had an awakening. And, I know I've been there. I know you've been there. Um, it's like sometimes it could be a very daunting experience when you just have the realization that you wake up one morning and your life isn't working and what was making you happy before no longer is. And maybe you've lost somebody, lost a job, you're going through a grieving process, and you just don't know what's next for you. We offer weekly live Zoom sessions on topics that are kind of current. Like last week, we talked about grief, LA fires, and stuff like that, and also resilience this week. And it offers tools, resources, community support on your spiritual journey. And it's a monthly membership program. And you could get more information about that through my website as well, drdoloresfazzino.com, and just look for the tab, I'm Awake Now What? And it'll get you the rest of the information that's there. I know for myself, on my spiritual journey many, many decades ago, uh, it was a different time and place. Okay. 50 years ago, the stuff that we're talking about now was considered wacko quacko. But it's mainstream now, so thank God the paradigms are shifting. And the good news is that you don't have to experience this by yourself and try to maneuver through it by yourself. You can, that's a choice. Yet there's ways of having support for that as well. So I encourage you to reach out and see how I could best support you. Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing all that you shared today. We didn't even get really into like the deep grief and different stories that you had, because you had mentioned pet loss and job opportunities and other things that you've experienced in your life. Of course, grief stacks up and it's cumulatively negative, right? It stacks up
Yeah.
in our bodies. And so we didn't get into a lot of that, but I do feel like this was the divine conversation that was just meant to be as it was and for whoever needs it. And I trust that people will get from it what they need. So I'll leave it at that. And I thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
And remember, when you unleash your heart, you unleash your life. Much love.